Objection?
I'd also ask permission. We have some brief remarks we wish to make about a judge that's coming up for a vote, and we'd ask that both myself and the other senator from Wyoming be allowed to speak consecutively.
Without objection.
Thank you, Mr. President. And I'd like to thank Senator Leahy and Senator Grassley and their staffs for moving this nomination. Because of their efforts, I have this opportunity to express my support for Judge Scott Skavdal's nomination to serve on the bench of the United States District Court for the District of Wyoming. Although Scott grew up in Harrison, Nebraska, it wasn't long before he made his way to my home state and enrolled at the University of Wyoming. The university must have felt like a whole new world to him because he just graduated from a high school that had less than 50 students. Still, while others might have been intimidated, Scott just saw it as another of life's challenges to be faced and overcome. So he worked hard and completed the requirements for his undergraduate degree. In between his classes, Scott managed to find the time to pursue another interest of his as he joined and played on the university's football team for 4 years. Now, after graduation, Scott made a decision that was to start him on a path that would set the tone and the direction of his life when he applied to and was accepted by the University of Wyoming Law School. His classes were difficult and demanding, but Scott knew what he wanted to do with his life, and what was true for him in so many things, he just wouldn't quit until he'd accomplished what he set out to do. That attitude of confidence and commitment to setting goals and achieving them is one of the reasons why Scott's been able to establish a reputation for himself throughout his career as a serious and thoughtful litigator and a judge. Whenever someone speaks of him, they always seem to use the same words to describe him. They say he is incredibly smart, a hard-working attorney, and a highly competent and capable judge. They also say that although he wasn't born in Wyoming, we're very glad to have him. Looking back over each step along the way that led him to this hearing, it's clear that Scott has used his time and his talents wisely and well. Because of his background and his experience on a daily basis, Scott has come to know in detail the issues that face the people of Wyoming and how the people feel about them. That's why it was no surprise that I've heard nothing but good things about Scott, his approach to the law, and his demeanor as a judge. Simply put, Scott knows all about the administration's ins and outs of the District of Wyoming, and he has used his courtroom as a classroom to help us all be informed and aware of the issues that come before him and the reasons for his decisions on all of them. At times like these, it's always interesting to take a moment to look back at someone's life and connect the dots that brought him or her to this important moment in time. For Scott, childhood in Nebraska led him to Wyoming, where he obtained the knowledge and skills he needed to pursue a career in something that really interested him, the law. He then used those credentials he earned in the classroom and his life to move step by step through our legal and judicial system. His talents and abilities soon caught the attention of former Wyoming Governor Dave Friedenthal and President Obama. And the President has now nominated him to serve in this very important post, and he has been unanimously voted out of committee. And in and of itself, that recognition is a powerful endorsement of Scott's background, his ability to interpret and apply the law, and his experience both in the courtroom and his community. It also expresses our confidence that Scott will continue to serve as an integral part of the court system of Wyoming, the West, and our nation for many years to come. I urge my colleagues to support this nomination, and I look forward to the Senate's approval of the nomination of Judge Scott Skavdal. I thank the Chair, and I yield the floor to my fellow Senator.
Mr. President.
Senator from Wyoming.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, in the 19 years since his graduation from the University of Wyoming College of Law, Judge Skavdal has distinguished himself both as an attorney and as a trial judge. After working in the private sector and clerking for U.S. District Judge William Downs, Judge Skavdal was appointed by former Governor Dave Friedenthal to serve as a district court judge for Wyoming's 7th Judicial District. During his time on the state bench, Judge Skavdal earned the respect of the attorneys and the parties appearing in his court. He earned that respect for his integrity and his ethics to carry out his duties. He earned that respect for his reasoned decisions. He earned that respect for the manner the manner in which he conducts himself in the courtroom and for being prepared and for his knowledge of the law. There is no doubt in my mind that Judge Skavdal will bring those same skills and that respect for the law that he exhibited in the 7th Judicial District to the federal branch. Wyoming's federal judges have a long tradition of being widely regarded by their peers and respected by the people who appear in their courts. Judge Scott Skavdal will continue that tradition for many years to come. I know Judge Skavdal. I know his family. This is a family and a judge that I respect and that I admire. And I strongly encourage all of the members of the Senate to join with Senator Enzi and join with me in supporting Judge Skavdal's nomination. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the floor.
Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Akaka.
Mr. President,
Senator from Alabama.
I see the senator from West Virginia. Is he preparing to speak? And
Senator, we're in a quorum call.
I would ask that the quorum call be dispensed with.
Without objection.
I don't want to take advantage of the senator from West Virginia. So I was going to speak about 5 minutes, and if I could. Mr. President,
Senator from Alabama.
the plan that's been introduced to the Senate today is really an affront to common sense. The plan presented by Senator Reid, it's an affront to the financial condition this country is in. I am working and hope to be able to support a highway bill that will have a modest increase in highway spending that's paid for, that does not increase the debt. And we can do that. It's not that hard. Apparently it is hard because nobody wants to make any tough choices. They want to set priorities. So then it becomes really hard. You just want to keep everything going at the same rate, but we really do need to invest some money in our infrastructure to maintain it, highway, bridges, roads, and expand certain highways that need to be fixed. So I think we should do that. Senator Reid comes in with a tax increase plan, a big spending plan, and totaling, I think, $60 billion. And we're supposed to pass this, and we haven't yet found the money to pay for the fundamental highway bill this Congress is supposed to be working on. And I believe it's wrong. I don't believe it can be justified by any stretch of the imagination. Well, don't worry, they say we're raising taxes to fund this new transportation infrastructure program. Only a small portion of it is the infrastructure bank. Well, this country is spending enough. We're wasting enough money now. It would be a mistake for the American people to allow Congress to extract more money from them to spend today on even a new program while we're doing nothing about the surging debt that's running on in our country, nothing about the Solyndra-type loan programs that are wasting money in huge amounts. That loan failure alone amounts to as much money as Alabama gets from the general fund, the highway bill and infrastructure bill, period. One loan. So we need to get our act together, and I don't believe it's legitimate. I'm the ranking Republican on the Budget Committee. I'm looking at these numbers, and I'm just astounded. So we raise taxes. One time they said we got to raise taxes to reduce our debt. Now we raise taxes to increase spending. A new program. And we still don't have the basic $12 billion that's being looked at to be found to fund the basic highway bill. I'm just flabbergasted. I don't believe it's right. I think it's some sort of clever gimmick that political thinkers got together and conjured up, that they could imagine that this will be a fun thing. We'll bring it up on the floor. It has no chance of passage. They'll bring it up on the floor. Republicans will oppose it, and we'll accuse them of being against highways. We'll accuse them of being for giving tax breaks to millionaires. That's what we'll do. That'll be clever. That'll be really fun. Well, sometimes we got to get serious about this debt. For the third year in a row, we just completed September 30th, we've had over $1 trillion in debt. 30% of the money we're spending, 40% of the money we're spending is borrowed. If we ever have to raise taxes, and that'll be the last thing, it ought to be done only after we've squeezed every wasteful dime out of spending in this country, before we go back and ask the American people to give more money to a Congress that plays games with their money, that's allowed the deficits to be maintained at a rate beyond anything this nation has ever seen before, and are projected to continue indefinitely under the plans that are out there from the budget the President submitted to us, which fortunately is not going to be accepted. So we've got a real problem, Mr. President. I thank the Chair. I just want to be on record as saying I don't believe this is a responsible way for us to proceed. I know there's a lot of politics around here, but we're at a point where we need to be thinking about a responsible way to find the funding to maintain a good highway program. And that's not going to be easy. To have this bill thrown in here that's going to be dead as a doornail is not a good approach to it. We need to be worrying about that problem rather than a huge new spending program, allowing a bunch of bureaucrats to pick and choose where they want to send the money. That's the way the progressives like to do it, you know. You just give them money and let these smart people decide where to pass it around. I probably won't give any to West Virginia and Alabama. They got bigger projects in their mind than that. Thank the Chair, and I wanted to share those thoughts. I hope my colleagues will oppose the Reid idea that will be coming up later today. I'll yield the floor.
Mr. President.
The Senator from West Virginia.
Sir, we've had a lot of conversation today, and you know we all agreed that we need infrastructure. On both sides of the aisle, we've had a good conversation. And I've said before, a road is not a Democrat or Republican road. A bridge is not a Democrat or Republican bridge, nor a water line or a sewer line. So I rise to address the build infrastructure in this country and start getting America back to work. Earlier this week, I attended a ribbon cutting at the Bluestone Dam in beautiful Hinton, West Virginia. When they started to work on that dam, I was a governor at that time of our great state of West Virginia, and I was sitting in my office, and I asked the Colonel of the Corps, I said, explain to me what the problem could be, and he said, well, maybe the bedrock, and there might be some possibilities with unusual flooding that we could lose that dam, breach that dam. I said, what would that mean? He said, well, think of it this way, Governor. Where we're sitting in your office in the Capitol in Charleston, West Virginia, we'd be underwater right now. So it brought it to reality to me, the extent of what we were dealing with and the billions and billions of dollars of downstream costs that we would incur. So we decided that we had to fix that with the help of our federal government. We started working on that way back in 2002, and we're going into our third phase of that project. Roads and bridges are in terrible condition all over the country. In every part of everybody's state. Every member of the House and every member of the Senate has a road or a bridge. All 535 of us, Republicans and Democrats alike, have a road or a bridge in our area, or a water line or a sewer line that needs repaired. As you in Delaware had noted, with the work that you did for all the good people of Delaware, there was still an awful lot of repair that was needed. I believe in infrastructure, and our economy can't grow. In West Virginia, we say our economy can't grow if people can't go. And with that, you've got to be able to be mobile. We also say that you have to drive to survive in West Virginia because we're one of the most rural states in the nation. Our people drive as far, if not further, than most states do for their jobs. And with that, we've got to make sure they have the ability to get to those good jobs and be able to provide for their family. I've said before, and it's been heard on the floor here for the last few hours, that infrastructure is not a Democrat idea or a Republican idea. It's a common sense idea. If you think in history, 2007, the governors at that time, we met in Philadelphia, knowing that the economy was slowing down. What can we do? We look back in history and we saw that President Roosevelt in the 30s basically invested in infrastructure. We had the WPA projects, which we see today. A lot of us have used the projects and still are. Tremendous value was returned to this country and the infrastructure of this country through those hard-working people at that time that just needed a hand, a helping hand. President Eisenhower in the 50s, after the Korean War, the economy needed jump-started, and you saw the interstate system being built for a very mobile society coming off of the wars. And we can see that we're still using that same infrastructure that was put in place then. This is a bipartisan because building infrastructure really is bipartisan. It solves two problems. It fixes our crumbling roads and bridges, and it creates much-needed American jobs. Of all the people in my state applying for unemployment, and it might be true in most every state, construction workers are the biggest group of unemployed people today, with the most skill sets in America. Almost 20% unemployment in the construction trades. Now that's unacceptable in this great country when we have repairs being needed everywhere. We're going to vote, I think, on two proposals today. And I know one just was put on in quick order, another one that we're going to be voting on. One's a Democratic measure, which is our Rebuild America Jobs Act. Another one is a Republican measure that funds transportation, and it reins in the EPA, which you know I've been trying to make sure that there's a common sense approach to how we balance the economy and the environment. In West Virginia, I think that we can do it as well, if not better than most, because we're dealing with those types of challenges. I believe that both of these bills will help kickstart the economy and create American jobs. I really do. And you all know we need that. I will vote for both of them. One's a Democrat proposal, one's a Republican proposal. But I do believe that I was sent here as a West Virginian to help my state. And not because they're bad ideas or wrong ideas that they're probably going to fail. They both have good merits to them. But as our good friend from Alabama just said, it's politics of the order. It's what we're dealing with. And we'll find reasons probably why we can't. I know that on our jobs bill was $60 billion, $50 billion. I think you spoke so eloquently on it earlier. $10 billion infrastructure bank. I know what infrastructure bank does in my state. I have $2 billion of needs. We have a $300 million revolving account, the same as what we're talking about here. It's helped us tremendously. But everybody comes to the table. We're able to bridge some financing and put projects together that we never could have done. And it's tremendous, tremendously needed. So with that being said, it probably won't pass because our friends, our dear friends on the other side of the aisle, our Republican colleagues and our friends over in the Republican Party are going to say, well, it's a 0.7% tax on incomes over $1 million. 0.7%. I can vote for that. I can vote for that. I support that. But I also recognize that that's a problem for them. So in recognizing that, I'm willing to reach out and look for other ways to pay for this. I think that's the spirit we should be working in. Is there offsets or credits? We've all voted for, I think 73 of us voted bipartisan for ethanol credit. Isn't that something that we could work on? How about the money we're spending in Afghanistan and Iraq and rebuilding those nations and infrastructure we're spending there? I've said this before. You help us build a new bridge in West Virginia, we won't blow it up. You help us build a new school, and I guarantee we won't burn it down. And we're so proud to say that the good people all over this country helped us in West Virginia, and we like to help other people in other states. We'll work together. That's what we should be doing, rebuilding America. So that's what I've asked everyone. Come together. Let's make sure that infrastructure, the need that we have all over our great country, is the first and foremost thing that we should be working together on. Because we do agree as Democrats and Republicans, and as Americans, we need it. And that is something I think we can come together on. Let me turn now to the Republican bill that will be coming up, which I've been notified a few hours ago. This bill isn't perfect either. Two-year extension transportation spending doesn't give states the certainty they need. We've usually had a 6-year authorization, and I know when I was in West Virginia, we did 6 years. We did our 6-year planning of our roads in our state based on the federal bill, the authorization of the federal highways bill. Now, with only 2 years, it's hard to get any project completed. Sometimes it's hard to even get it on the drawing board. With that being said, I am a strong supporter of reining in the EPA, which this bill does, and I believe that we have to set our transportation priorities. Unfortunately, Washington and all of us here seem to become so dysfunctional that politics, whether it's the party politics or the personal politics, is put before the good of the country. This has got to stop. I heard one of our good senators from Arizona this morning saying we're down to 9%. If it wasn't for our staff and our family, don't know if we'd be within the margin of error. And with that being said, we've got to come together. We've had disagreements throughout the history of this great country, and we've come together many times on very difficult. This is one that I think it will challenge all of us to come together as Americans. People of West Virginia didn't send me here to Washington to put the blame game or play the blame game. I've said many times I've never fixed a problem by blaming somebody else for it. I fixed a problem by identifying that we had a problem and then tried to bring all sides together to fix it. And that's what we need more of here in Washington. I don't think any of us were sent here to blame each other. I think we were sent here to work together. So, again, I'm going to urge all my colleagues and friends on both sides of the aisle to focus on the next generation. And we see them every week come here, our young pages. You are our next generation. We need to be making votes for you, not our next election, which is in 2012. That election is going to come and go. But if we don't give you the opportunity to have the building tools you need to build the foundation that you can be the greatest next generation this country's ever seen, then I don't know what we're going to say for the future of this country. I'm, for one, not going to vote along those lines to where it's going to be based on what's good for me, based on what's good for the party I belong to, but strictly based on what's good for America and this next generation. Thank you, Mr. President, and I notice that I yield the floor.
Mr. President. Senator from Nebraska.
Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent to speak for about 12 minutes as if in morning business.
Without objection.
Mr. President, few things provide me with greater clarity than conversations I have with people back home in Nebraska. I rise today to discuss a few of those conversations I had just last week during our work period back home. I use this opportunity to meet with electricity providers serving Nebraskans across the great state of Nebraska, from the more populated areas like Omaha to smaller communities like Hastings, Nebraska. It will come as no surprise, I believe, to anyone that the focus of their frustration, their anger, is with the EPA. They feel that they have been treated unfairly. They feel that the agency has not been straightforward or transparent. They feel that they now have a target on their backs. And they know that compliance with the latest EPA regulatory bombshell is going to have a crushing impact on the communities that they serve. Their latest concern is a rule known as cross-state air pollution rule, or cross-state. The rule addresses airborne emissions that EPA claims cross state lines and may affect air quality in another state. EPA issued the final rule in July of this year. Let me repeat that. EPA issued the final rule in July of this year and then demanded compliance by January 2012. That's 6 months. That is an impossibility, and EPA knows it. Well, here's why it's an– this is especially relevant to my state. Nebraska was not included in the old version of the same rule, the so-called Clean Air Interstate Rule. We weren't a part of it. And the final rule changed dramatically from the proposed version. For example, the required reductions increased dramatically from the proposed rule that was published in July of 2010. So Nebraska first found itself subject to this type of EPA rule in the proposed rule in July of 2010. Then the final rule arrives a year later and boom, dramatically different rule. More severe reductions in compliance in an almost laughable 6 months. So basically, Nebraska gets a final rule thrust upon them and no opportunity to comply. That could not be more unjust. Draconian changes made in a final rule that depart so significantly from the proposed rule defeat the very purpose of our laws that prescribe how agencies are supposed to make rules. And I ran one of those agencies as Secretary of Agriculture. This process makes a mockery out of the rulemaking process. It makes public comments absolutely meaningless. What good does review of a proposed rule do when the final rule is so radically different from the original proposal? And it also means that the community regulated cannot plan and cannot fix the problem. This is our government we're talking about. Utilities cannot go to their ratepayers and say, look, we have to make changes. It's going to take some time and money, but here's our plan, and here's how much it will cost you as a ratepayer. And EPA has totally shoved aside the traditional role that some state regulators play as an EPA partner in establishing clean air plans known as state implementation plans. In fact, in this case, the EPA established a federal implementation plan, a one-size-fits-all national plan that completely rejects state efforts to manage compliance. Now, our power providers and regulators are echoing the same message. There just isn't enough time for them. Instead of 3 or 5 or 10 years that is really needed by administrative fiat, EPA has said you get 6 months to rebuild a power plant. And let me be crystal clear about what Nebraska's power providers did and didn't say. They did not say we can't change and we won't change. They did not say just leave me alone. What they did say to me very clearly is we can't wave a magic wand. We cannot do the impossible. We cannot put together the finance plan in 6 months. We cannot put a request for bid out and get the work done in 6 months. We cannot get a design plan written by a competent engineering firm. We cannot arrange for a plant shutdown. We cannot get the construction crews to our facility, especially as cold weather sets into our state between now and January 1 to rebuild the power plant. It simply isn't humanly possible. So what options are possible? Someone listening to me today might ask, what options do they have? Well, unfortunately, the first thing our providers are doing is just trying to understand the rule. That in itself is no small task because, as I explained, the rule is essentially brand new. The ink is barely dry. The EPA did a head fake. They said, here's the rule, and then completely changed it in the final rule. And secondly, electricity providers are making plans, get this, they're making plans all across this country to decrease electric generation because of this rule. In Hastings, Nebraska, ratepayers have been told to expect an increase in operating costs of at least $3.8 million per year, including costs of retrofits for this rule and two others that are in the works by EPA. Hastings figures $40 to $50 million will be spent over the next 5 years. Now think about that for a second. Imagine $40 to $50 million for a community of 25,000 people. And that's for Hastings. And only if the utility can figure out how it can get it done. And guess who bears the brunt of these costs? Every Hastings resident with an electricity meter. Not shareholders. This is not a big electric company. No shareholder equity to be drawn down, no preferred stock to be newly issued. We are, in our state, a 100% public power state. Just those folks in Hastings, Nebraska, because they got swept into an EPA rule last July with a January deadline. Fremont, Nebraska, another great Nebraska community caught in the crosshairs, has indicated the cross-state rule and two other EPA rules will cost customers about $35 million over the next 3 years. Now, in New York City or Washington, D.C., $35 million may seem insignificant. But to the 25,000 residents of Fremont, Nebraska, it is a huge deal. Similarly, the cross-state rule will cost the Nebraska Public Power District, our largest electricity provider, about $6 million next year in reduced revenue, as well as mandating about $40 million in costs before the end of 2012. Electricity providers across the state are all looking at purchasing power from other generators. The only way they can get compliance now is to reduce generation. Of course, many neighboring utilities in the state are subject to the same final rule. And guess what? This is the problem across the country. So everybody's in the hunt. And the short compliance time frame is likely to drive the price of energy even higher. Another option includes purchasing pollution credits on the open market. No one knows really how much it will cost because the same compressed timeline affects the markets for credits. You may have also noticed that I have not really mentioned the bid, the design, the implementation, the installation of pollution control equipment as a compliance strategy, because in our state that possibility isn't an option for us because of the EPA timeline. 6 months is not enough time, especially when the labor, the technical knowledge, the contractors, the financing are all being chased by other utilities subject to the same rule. Is it any wonder that people are frustrated? Is it any wonder at all? That's why today I'm introducing legislation that addresses the way the EPA handled this rule. My bill takes a couple reasonable steps to address this unfair treatment, not only in my state, but in 27 other states. First, under my bill, EPA is prohibited from dictating federal implementation plans unless the agency has given the state a sufficient amount of time to develop a plan. The state must be given 2 years to put a plan in place. In addition, if my bill is enacted, EPA cannot choose to reject a state's plan if, as a result, compliance would immediately follow. In other words, my bill prohibits EPA from jamming states by rejecting their plans and require an unreasonable compliance time frame. Finally, my bill says EPA's compliance deadlines are set aside for 3 years while states get a chance to put this together. The message of my bill is just straightforward. Don't freeze out states. Don't jam us with a compliance schedule that everybody knows won't work. Nebraskans, like everybody else, are tired of being treated as second-class citizens by an agency that is really run amok. And I suspect the same is true of 27 other states. Nebraskans simply cannot believe EPA is hitting the accelerator on a rule that will drive up electricity bills in more than half the country with no way for states to comply. Well, I share their frustration. The EPA is in a constant thirst for power. I urge my colleagues to co-sponsor this legislation to introduce one small dose of common sense to this out-of-control agency. I yield the floor. I yield the floor, Mr. President.
The senator from California.
Mr. President, I listened with interest to the senator's explanation of the cross-air rule, and I would just say he is off the mark, because if you produce deadly pollution in your state, deadly, you have an obligation to clean it up before it goes into another state. It's like taking your garbage and dumping it in your neighbor's, front lawn. We don't do that in America. So we're going to have a robust debate next week on the cross-air rule, but I would hope people would keep in mind we're talking about deadly pollution produced in one state, series of states, moving over to a series of other states who have no defense. No defense. And so anyone who wants to come here and claim that that's the right thing to do morally, just walk away from that rule, I think they're going to have a hard time explaining it back home. I would not dump garbage on the front lawn of my neighbor's house. And I think that, Bettina, is the best explanation of what this is about. But more on that later. Today we're going to be facing a very interesting choice. As we know, President Obama has put together a major jobs package, and he pays for it by going to the millionaires and saying, once you make $1 million, after that, we think you could pay it just a little bit more to help us get out of this recession. And my Republican friends voted that down. They were just appalled that we would even suggest that there be, even a few dollars of increased taxes on people who make over $1 million. They would rather not do any job creation and protect the people who earn over $1 million. So we have a very stark choice today. We have a small version of the jobs bill. This one focuses on infrastructure, mostly transportation investments, paid for by a 0.7% tax on people who earn over $1 million, and would not go into effect on any of those funds until you've passed the million. So it would be taxed 0.7% on income over $1 million. I make that point because it is not going to hurt anybody. A person making $1.5 million would pay an additional $3,000. This is not anything that's going to hurt the millionaires and the billionaires. It's going to make this country stronger. It's going to grow this economy. So here's what we have. We have a Democratic jobs bill. It's $60 billion, $50 billion for roads and bridges, and $10 billion for an infrastructure bank. To put that into the context of why this is such a good bill and why it would create 650,000 jobs, let me tell you what it is in essence doing. It is taking an extra year of transportation funding. We spend about $50 billion a year approximately through the Highway Trust Fund, and it would inject essentially another year of spending over the next 12 months, creating well over 650,000 new jobs. What the Republican alternative does is actually lose jobs. What they do is they say they will continue the Highway Trust Fund for 2 years, so they're just continuing on what we're already doing. That's great. But then they cut the equivalent amount from police, fire, food inspection, FBI, and it will result in a loss of many jobs, 200,000 jobs. So you have one bill, the Democratic bill, that creates a minimum of 650,000 jobs, and you have the Republican bill that cuts 200,000 jobs. What are they thinking, Mr. President? What are they thinking? This is not the time to cut 200,000 jobs. And then they end the health reform, which we all know, while not perfect, is going to help our deficit, reduce our deficit. So what they've done is they continue the highway spending at current levels, doesn't add one job. Then they cut all those other jobs to pay for it, 200,000 jobs, and then they repeal health reform, which is going to add to the deficit. They cannot stand the thought of a billionaire paying a little bit more to help us at this time, even though everybody knows we're at a point in time where the gap between the wealthiest and the middle class has never been bigger. Mr. President, 400 families earn more than 50% of all the rest of us. 400 families earn more than 50% of all the rest of us. It is unbelievable. Now, my state has many wealthy people in it, many poor people in it, and a good middle class. But it's getting tougher to be part of that middle class. The middle class is hit hard with health costs. They're hit hard with college costs that keep going up. They're hit hard with gas prices going up. They're hit hard from mortgages that they can't refinance because their mortgage is now higher than their home is worth. So we have to act here on these issues, and we have the ability to do it. If we just read the preamble of our Constitution, it tells us what we're supposed to do. Work for a more perfect union, establish justice, domestic tranquility, promote the general welfare. We have to do these things today because we're losing the middle class. And this bill that's before us, the Democratic Jobs Bill, is an excellent place to start this very day by infusing $60 billion into spending that will go mostly to private sector contractors, people who build the roads, build the bridges. Do you know, Mr. President, that 70,000 bridges in America are deficient? 70,000 bridges in America are deficient. My colleague, Senator Inhofe, and I are working very closely on a highway bill. We're going to have one for you soon. And he tells the story of a woman walking in Oklahoma, and she's just simply taking a walk, and a bridge starts to fall apart and falls down and traps her and kills her. And he says she was a young mother You know, this is America in the 21st century. That is not acceptable. You can't have a country like ours neglect its infrastructure. It's wrong. But our Republican friends won't work with us because they don't want to ask people earning over $1 million to pay just a little bit more. For example, if someone makes $1.1 million, they'll have to pay $700 more in their taxes. That's it. But they don't even want to go there. What they want to do is say, oh yeah, we'll just renew the highway bill, but we will slash across the board everything but defense, they said. And that's how we're going to pay, they said, for their jobs bill, which actually will lose hundreds of thousands of jobs. It's unbelievable to me. I don't think this is the time to say we'll turn our backs on jobs. As a matter of fact, in order to extend the Highway Trust Fund, we're going to fire cops, firefighters, food safety inspectors, FBI agents, and Border Patrol agents. That's what their alternative is, so don't vote for it unless you think it's the time to put firefighters out of work and cops and food safety inspectors and FBI agents and Border Patrol agents. Now, the other thing the Republicans do in this so-called jobs bill of theirs, which is a no-jobs bill, it's a jobs loss bill, is they decide they want to block implementation of very important health and safety rules. And I want to go through what those rules are. And we're going to talk about the Clean Air Act right now. Where's the stuff on there? What they're cutting, what they're repealing. Well, where is that in here? The Republicans are repealing two rules that deal with clean air. And here's the thing. It's going to make people sicker. It's going to mean loss of jobs in clean tech. And it's the last thing the country needs, and it flies in the face of the views of the people. Let's talk about one of the rules they want to cut back, industrial boilers and incinerators. This bill, called a jobs bill, would halt an EPA rule issued in February 2011 to reduce toxic air pollution. Toxic air pollution. What do I mean? Toxic means it's toxic to your health. It will hurt you. People will die from toxic air pollution. People do die from toxic air pollution. The toxins that the boiler and incinerator rule would reduce include mercury, lead, and other hazardous air pollutants released by boilers and incinerators. And let me tell you, they can write it the way they want it, but here's what happens when we go back to those days when we allowed these toxins to be emitted. We saw developmental disabilities in our children. We saw more cases of cancer, more cases of heart disease, aggravated asthma, and premature death. These aren't just words. Congress commissioned a study, and we now know exactly what we're doing and how many lives it saves and how many visits to the hospital it saves. And let me remind my friends who think that it's good for the economy to have toxic air pollution that if you can't breathe, you can't work. If you have to rush to the hospital because your kid is rushed there because of an asthma attack, you lose a day's work. If you're a pregnant woman and now you have a problem with the child and the child is disabled or has problems mentally from too much mercury, this is a tragedy. So people say, oh, the EPA, they're regulating too much and it costs too much. Let me tell you the price of the Republican agenda. Sick people, loss of jobs in the clean tech industry, loss of days work, loss of kids' school days. I would urge my colleagues in the Senate, both parties, when you have your next meeting with a large group of people, whether it's 100 people, 50 people, or a couple, just ask them how many have asthma. Ask them how many know someone close to them with asthma. I guarantee you that a third to half of the room, hands will go up. Now, that doesn't just happen, asthma, because you just woke up on the wrong side of the bed. It happens because of the air you're breathing, and it's toxic. But in this so-called jobs bill, which I already told you loses jobs, they not only do that, but to add insult to injury, they repeal all these rules. Now, let me put it into context for you, since I've now spoken emotionally about what it does to people when they breathe in toxins. Let me give you the numbers. When Congress demanded a study, we said, give us the numbers, and a study was done. We believe that the protections from this industrial boiler rule will annually prevent up to 6,500 premature deaths, 4,000 heart attacks, 4,300 hospital emergency room visits, 310,000 days when people miss work or school, and 41,000 cases of aggravated asthma. The benefits from these safeguards are expected to be $54 billion annually by 2014. That's the rule my Republican colleagues want us to set aside. If you went up to your constituency and you said to them, you know, we have a rule here, and industry's going to have to use the best available technology and clean up their pollution, and here's what it's going to do. It's going to prevent 6,500 premature deaths, 4,000 heart attacks, 4,300 hospital visits, 310,000 days when people miss school, 41,000 cases of aggravated asthma, and it's going to deliver $54 billion a year in benefits, health benefits. I think your constituent would say, go for it, Senator. That makes sense. And let me show you a poll that just came out that shows you what the people, how the people feel about this. You have it? Okay. Now listen to this. You've got my Republican friends offering what they call a jobs bill, which I've just proved to you is job cuts, because they just simply continue the Highway Trust Fund. They don't add any news, but they cut a couple of 100,000 jobs to pay for it, okay? And that's their so-called jobs bill. Then they want to repeal two rules that fall under the Clean Air Act. And I just talked to you about the boiler rule. But let me tell you what the people think, since we are supposed to represent the people. There was a bipartisan poll done in October, which is just a few days away. 88% of Democrats, 85% of independents, and 58% of Republicans oppose Congress stopping the EPA from enacting new limits on air pollution from power plants. Who is speaking for the people? We need to vote down the Republican alternative, because 88% of Democrats want us to, 85% of independents want us to, and 58% of Republicans want us. They don't want Congress stepping in. Then Tuesday, Senator Paul is going to have a motion to repeal the cross-state air pollution rule, which is a rule that says to your state, you know what, if you're creating toxic air pollution and it's flowing to another state, you got to clean up your act. 67% of voters support the cross-state air pollution rule, and 77% of voters support the mercury toxic rule. Is that the other rule that they're repealing? What's the other one that they're repealing? Okay. 65% of voters surveyed are confident that the health and environmental benefits of air pollution standards outweigh the costs, and 75% of voters believe a compelling reason to implement these air rules is the boost to local economies and thousands of new jobs that are created from investments in new technologies. So if we are representing the people of these great United States, we better listen to what they're saying in a bipartisan way. They're telling us to leave the EPA alone. People come to this floor, they demonize the EPA. They are going against the belief of the American people. Here are some incredible quotes. Do we have the study? Do we have the study on us that we just... Yes, thank you, Grant. I want to read a couple of quotes because, to me, it's amazing what's happening around here. And when I get to the place here, I want to give you some quotes from unlikely sources, and I'd ask how many minutes we have on our side.
You're down to 14 minutes and 10 seconds.
Thank you so much, Mr. President. Here's a quote from General Motors. General Motors Company recognizes the benefit of the country continuing the historic national program to address fuel economy and greenhouse gases that the EPA began. That's signed by the chairman and CEO of General Motors. A whole group of electric companies, electricity producing companies, PG&E, Calpine, Next Extra, Public Service Enterprise Group, National Grid, Exelon, Constellation Energy, Austin Energy, wrote a letter to the Wall Street Journal. Our company's experience complying with air quality regs demonstrates that regulations can yield important economic benefits, including job creation, while maintaining reliability. Kind of amazing. And Gerald Ford, a Republican president, who signed the Safe Drinking Water Act in 1974, that's under attack too, by the way, he said, nothing is more essential to the life of every single American than clean air, pure food, and safe drinking water. Yet if you look at the Republican plan, they roll back clean air regulations, they roll back food safety. Even after we had dozens of people die from contaminated cantaloupe, my friends on the other side think it's the time now to cut back on food safety inspection. Give me a break. Who are we here representing? That's why people across the country are upset. They see things like this and they say, is this Alice in Wonderland? Listen to what Christy Todd Whitman and William Ruckelshaus wrote, two Republicans who were former EPA administrators under Republican presidents. They said, and I quote, "It is easy to forget how far we've come in the past 40 years. We should take heart from all this progress and not, as some in Congress have suggested, seek to tear down the agency that the President and Congress created to protect America's health and environment." They wrote that letter in March of this year. They understand this isn't a partisan issue. Republicans breathe the same air that Democrats breathe, and independents also share the air. And that's why it's so frustrating to see in a so-called jobs bill from my colleagues on the other side of the aisle actual loss of jobs and loss of clean air regulations and loss of food safety inspectors. And I have to say, I find myself quoting Richard Nixon more and more. Listen to what he said when he signed at the State of the Union, and he signed the Clean Air Act. He said, clean air, clean water, open spaces, these should once again be the birthright of every American. So I've given you the quotes from Republican presidents and Republican administrators, former administrators of the EPA. I am stunned at this so-called jobs bill. So I talked about the industrial boiler rule. They also rolled back the cement manufacturing facilities rule. It would indefinitely delay standards to address smog and toxic soot pollution from over 150 cement kilns nationwide. These facilities contain hazardous air pollutants including mercury, arsenic, lead, and other heavy metals. Remember the movie Arsenic and Old Lace? Arsenic kills you. Too much of it does that. Come on. We need to clean up the air. We need to be sure we do it in a reasonable way, and I'm on that side. Do it in a reasonable way. No one could be more reasonable than Lisa Jackson. I'll tell you, the woman has the patience of a saint. She is not going to go out and hit people over the head with this. She's going to phase in these regulations. She's going to listen carefully. You have to listen. Mercury, arsenic, lead, and other heavy metals, and they are the third largest mercury source in the country, cement manufacturing. Let me tell you what these pollutants do. They cause cancer. They harm the reproductive system and the developmental system. Pregnant women and children are at risk. We hear a lot of talk about life. When does, life begin? That's up to each individual and their God to decide that. But one thing I hope we could agree on is a pregnant woman shouldn't be subjected to too much mercury, too much arsenic in the air. So we have a rule here, a reduction of mercury and toxic soot emissions. We know that rule will prevent 2,500 premature deaths, 1,500 heart attacks, 1,700 emergency room and hospital visits. It will prevent 17,000 cases of aggravated asthma attacks, 130,000 days of lost work, and it will provide up to $18 billion of benefits annually by 2013, a benefit-to-cost ratio of 19-to-1. And yet, my friends on the other side think it's a terrible idea and want to indefinitely delay it. Let me tell you something. If we had that kind of attitude in Congress years before, we wouldn't have a Clean Air Act. And I could tell you what happened in Los Angeles. We used to have about 160 days in Los Angeles where people could not go out. They were warned to stay indoors. As a result of the Clean Air Act now, we had none of those days, none, in Los Angeles in 2010. So why on earth does anyone want to delay these rules? You want to sit with Lisa Jackson and sit with me as the chairman of the Environment Committee and sit with others and see a way that we can do this in a fair manner? Of course. But the public wants us to act. And the action they want us to take is to support the EPA, not to put our nose in there and stop them from doing what the Clean Air Act requires them to do. Poll after poll shows that voters are on the side of clean air. They're on the side of protecting public health. They are not on the side of polluters. So I would just like to say, if there's one thing we know today, we know two things. People want jobs, and they also want their health protected. And we also know that when you protect the people's health, what happens is a huge economic boost is given to the clean tech sector, and that boost has resulted in many, many jobs. 1.7 million jobs are created because of these clean air rules, clean water rules. And the whole world wants these technologies. I had the amazing experience of visiting China. I didn't see the sun. I didn't see the sun for the 7 days or so that I was there. The air is filthy, and people complain about it. One day, we had the hint of sun breaking through the pollution. And the people there said, "What a beautiful day, you must have brought the good weather." I said, "You know what, come to California, I'll show you blue sky." We cannot go backwards. We need to move this country forward. If the arc of history bends towards justice, it also bends toward health, public health, making sure our people get that health care, that they don't have those public health enemies out there, the soot, the arsenic, the lead, the mercury, and yes, jobs. We have seen our GDP explode since we passed the Clean Air Act, and we grew more than any other industrialized nation while we had these laws in place, for two reasons. One, these laws create clean tech jobs. Two, if you can't breathe, you can't work, and when you have a healthy society, you're far more productive. So you have the Democratic alternative that will create over 600,000 jobs in transportation. It doesn't go into these extraneous issues such as the air pollution laws. And then you have, and it's paid for by 0.7% on income over $1 million. And then you have the Republican alternative that just continues our transportation at the same levels and pays for it by cutting 200,000 jobs, police, fire, and the rest, FBI agents, food safety inspectors, Border Patrol agents, just what we don't need. That's what they do. Plus, just for good measure, they repeal, basically, 2 Clean Air Act rules that I talked about, from boilers and cement plants. Folks, if ever there was a difference between the parties in evidence, this is it. If one person comes up to me and says, "Is there really a difference between Democrats and Republicans?" I will point them to this debate. And so I hope very much that we will get enough votes to take up the Democratic bill that is fully paid for and will create over 600,000 jobs, that will fix our deficient bridges and our deficient highways, that will really say to the construction workers, we know you're out of work and we're going to put you back to work. Or the Republican alternative that would result in 200,000 jobs lost and overturning these clean air rules that are so important that the vast majority of people, including Republicans who are asked about it, say, "Congress, keep your hands off these rules because you know what, we think they're working." I thank you very much. I would reserve the balance for other speakers. Thank you very much. I yield the floor.